know how I want to end it with Cinerama, and that's going to be the through line of the whole thing. That didn't come about until about 2015. And then the whole Tarantino thing just happened on the side. And as we started to set up to do it, you know, Mike was on the phone to Roadshow going, oh yeah, can we get a print? Are we going to get any prints in Australia? That would have been the deal breaker, obviously. And from there, we started, but in the back of my mind for that whole thing, it was like, oh, this is going to be great, projection challenge, but wow, what if Tarantino could actually come? Because we knew he was doing drop-ins, and it actually happened. I mean, it was just kind of not a...
like you're down the street from him.
Yeah. I mean, we knew he was coming to Australia, and we had a great relationship with Roadshow, and I make those little newsreels that we put on at the Sun. Before all our shows. We don't have any ads, just a newsreel. So I made one especially with all of us in mind, thinking Roadshow will send it to him, and they did. And that's what tipped him to come to the Sun instead of the Astor, which is the other theatre in Melbourne, which has been running 70 for a long time, and it's kind of, that's the home of 70. We were kind of the new kids on the block, but we got it. In terms of distribution, to your other questions there, yes, lots of education. Gravitas in North America are lined up to distribute it for everything but theatrical, and I've got a couple of leads on theatrical. So yes, it will be, and then streaming will be last. So yeah, I'm hoping it will get out there.
Beautiful, but I do also have a question. The great Douglas Trumbull was here in 2019. I met him, and it was his film running. What was it?
Brainstorm?
Brainstorm?
No, it wasn't.
Silent Running.
It was Silent Running.
Yeah.
And so anyways, got to meet him, and then he told me about, he lives in Massachusetts, he's working on this new technology. I thought, wow, that sounds really interesting. I didn't realize that he had passed away. I just found out when I saw that.
Well, either did I. I mean, we also visited him in 2019. That's when we did it. It was just a couple of months before COVID hit, so we're lucky we got all the American stuff done. So yeah, I was in touch with him a lot, and I got to show him a locked off fine cut with the music and everything, but not mixed or graded yet. And he was absolutely over the moon about it, which was, you know, something I will always treasure. He loved it, and he was going to get behind it. He was on the board at the Egyptian. He was going to get it screened there. And then, you know, I was doing the archival, and he was writing letters to help me get cheaper rates at the studios and all this sort of stuff. And he sort of went quiet for a while, and he said, "Oh, sorry, I've been a bit ill." And then one day I opened Facebook and saw that he passed away.
Question I have for you here is the technology that we saw a clip of it in your film.
Magi, yeah.
Now this is 3 years later. Do you know anything about, is that moving forward? Do you think that is also a future for filming?
It was, yeah, absolutely stunning. And it had overcome the problems that The Hobbit had. And he explains how introducing the shutter closure gives it a more filmic look, while still retaining the advantages of the high frame rates.
Do we know if that is going to come about as filmmakers going to
I don't know. I know that he's like working. There are many partners involved, so I can't imagine it will stop. But I don't know any more about its progress.
And I don't know either, Rob. I don't know. I would like to think it's going forward, but it may be that it's not. Trumbull had a lot of difficulties up against Hollywood, if you will, because quite honestly, he was too brilliant in some ways, too smart, too forward-thinking, and a lot of people would say too expensive. So it's still there. All those things still there.
And as he was saying in the development, he was desperately trying to make it as easy and affordable for an establishment to put the technology in, like it's a standard DCP, and you just kind of build it in a week, and it's And as he says, it's like I can't think of any way of making it easier than that. He's trying to push the industry forward, but we're still very stuck.
Trumbull was very much about a point you make very strongly in your film, which is kind of, shouldn't the money be spent in exhibition? I mean, why spend hundreds of millions of dollars making a movie and then don't care about how it's shown? What's that about? It's some odd perversion to be that way, to think that way. Yeah.
And that follows through now with the problems we're having with Oppenheimer, in the fact that there's all these screens that are just scratching their prints immediately and showing really bad presentations. And it's a terrible shame, because this is film's last chance. We've created a resurgence from the Hateful Eight forward in people appreciating the look of film on screen. But if we're not training projectionists, we're not going to the trouble of maintaining equipment, setting it up, using it properly, and we're giving these really bad presentations on film. People go, I saw this film thing. I can't see the interest in it. It'll die again, and we won't get another chance.
That's so true. Yes. Yes, sir.
Was there anything about projection that you learned while making the movie that surprised you?
I had that question before. I learned how to be comfortable in a very confined space for many, many hours. Normally, in the days when it was all platters, you would, like we show here, you would set something on timer and then you would run to the next one. And so, you'd have a cycle of an hour and 20 minutes, and then you might get 20 minutes to rest, and then the cycle would start again. But with 70mm, you can't leave it alone. You cannot leave it alone. So, maybe I shouldn't share this, but I have a little projectionist pee bottle that, lives with the... because you can't leave it alone. And with Oppenheimer, I've been doing 3 sessions in a row. That's an 11-hour shift, and it's getting harder to do that. So you have pillows, and you have a little stool, and you have things, and you have to plan your meals, because you don't get enough time in between. The turnarounds are too tight. There's just enough time to relace it and get ready and go again. I've learnt to manage that. Look, I suppose since all that has happened, and I'm just restating what's in the film, that I never thought I'd get to touch 70. I never thought I'd see another print of Lawrence of Arabia or a new print of 2001, and I have one of each sitting in my bio box. So I just keep pinching myself that audiences are getting to see these films again in the right way.
I have to ask Rob this question as well. I actually have asked him this question, but I told him I wanted to ask it in front of the audience. I noticed, as some of you did, there are some scenes in this picture of Rob walking in the background or the midground of a picture, and you can see that he's talking, but the dialogue's been wiped, and there's a new narration by him over it, which to me, as also a filmmaker, documentary filmmaker, I kind of recognize as the nature of making a documentary, where you start out thinking your story is going to follow this path, and it doesn't really do that. It goes here, and then it goes over there, and then eventually you get to where you were going. But the story takes a different path along the way. Can you tell us a little about that, Rob?
Yeah, look, this film was really born in the edit, and that's mainly what I do. I've been an editor for 30 years. So, as I explained before, a lot of this stuff was I was just running from one deinstallation to another, like one thing being ripped out, and I was just filming it and covering it, not actually knowing how I was going to use it. And it wasn't until I introduced myself as a storyteller that I started to construct sequences. But even then, I still didn't have the overall, there was nothing on paper. There was never anything on paper. Like, I had to write treatments and things to get money, but I never wrote a script. It just evolved, and it sat in my head for all that time. I knew that Cinerama was going to be the arc, and the thing that everything else would hang off, and I knew the ending would be that, and then the Tarantino sort of thing became the ending. It really, so many things in there were intended for a certain use and then used for something completely else. So it's all about the editing, and being the narrator means that I could sit in the edit suite and change the narration right there and then and try it. So there was that luxury.
Oh, yeah. I think it's nice to see that kind of intimacy and kind of behind-the-scenes filmmaking within the film itself. It reminds you that it's a human process and a thought process as you're making it, as you're finishing it.
The other interesting thing is that most of the situations were one-offs. You knew that you had that day or that occasion to film whatever it was you were getting, and you wouldn't get a chance for pickups. There was no chance to go back. And so I would record it all, I'd take it home, I'd back it up, I might have a skim through it as I'm capturing it, and that was it. And then I wouldn't go back and look at it again. So it wasn't until 2020, 8 years after we started, that I actually went back and looked at everything again, started editing. And so that was a really good process, because I knew in my head how it was going to work, but seeing the footage fresh again was a really great way to approach it. And you know, for me, COVID was brilliant, because I had 12 months to cut the film uninterrupted by anything else.
Rob, I want to mention one thing. I told you when I saw the film in England last October, when you premiered it in the UK, someone asked me, what did I mean when I said that the digital realm is not archival? And I simply meant that on two counts, it is not archival: stability and longevity. Film has been proven to have longevity. It's been around 120 plus years. The digital realm simply does not have that lifespan. We don't know what will happen down the road. We didn't know, for example, when safety film was created to surpass the limitations and flammability, quite honestly, of nitrate film. We didn't know that it would develop its own issues, its own problems, known as vinegar syndrome, safety film deterioration. So we don't know what will happen to the digital realm. There could be something that occurs. And
we don't know what's going to happen to polyester, for that matter. Polyester is the film that replaced acetate and is ridiculously strong.
Yes.
In 30 years' time, we may see some weird chemical aberration that we weren't expecting.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I was going to say that the stability of film is also remarkable compared to the digital realm. If you drop a DCP, for example, it may not play again, or it may play, but it's got dropouts. Film, presumably, if it's in a can, you can drop the film can, the film will still play. Sure, film can shrink, it can fade, it can be damaged, but it can also be repaired and duped, and using digital tools, it can be recreated on film again. So on those two counts, stability and longevity, the digital realm just is not there. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
Love the film completely. When you were in Los Angeles doing the Cinerama Dome tour, and then you went to the Pacific, you were walking up a set of stairs in the projection room. Was that at the Cinerama Dome?
Yeah, it was.
So was it in disrepair? Because it sure looked like it from.
Look, it had that piece of wall that was hanging off, and Dave said, "Oh, let me push that back for you." He said, "No, leave it. It's perfect. Leave it. Don't touch it."
Yeah. Okay. So that's the way it looks, more or less.
Look, I don't know what it looks like now, because it's been sitting there. No one's touched it for all this time.
Yeah.
So I imagine it's all still there. I don't know.
I've been in that booth a lot. That was just one ceiling tile that had come loose.
Yeah. For the length of time we saw it, just kind of jostled me.
I used it to create a mood.
In a manner of speaking, that booth didn't get much wear, because remember when the theater opened in 1963, it had a kind of a boomerang-shaped booth for 3 projectors, but they didn't install 3 projectors until 2002, after the theater was renovated. So I guess you could say the 2 ends of it are barely been used.
Yeah, there was walking tour of the projection booth after the How the West Was Won screening. That's how I got up there. So it looked familiar to me, and when I saw the ceiling panel, it's just awesome. Thank you.
What was it about the transition to digital that made you want to tell this story to begin with?
I guess it's the filmmaker in me. And being projectionist as well, and like catching the end of film. As I said, I didn't know what I was making, but I just felt this urge to want to capture, maybe just capture the little piece of film projection that I'd been, a part of. So I was literally filming my colleagues and my friends and running around to the places, because the projection world's quite small and everybody knows each other. So once people knew about it, they started ringing me and saying, "Oh, do you know that Readings is pulling out their platters and there's a whole strip of Vic Fives lined up against a wall and they're all going to get trashed." And this stuff was so kind of evocative for me that I just thought, great, I can and I can get some great shots and it'll look fantastic. And so it was just like I was driven by wanting to shoot things, wanting to capture things, wanting to remember things, and didn't know what I was going to do with it. And then it just slowly rolled on.
I just see every director of every film school. I'm a graduate of Cal Arts, so as an example, there's a film school there. If just the professors, the teachers knew about this film, they would just should screen it for their students. It's just would be a natural, because there's so much to learn here.
Yeah, look, I hope so, and Gravitas will really push the education side of it.
Yeah.
This is one little thing that's stopping us, and that is I need Tarantino's signature on a release form. And I didn't get it at the time, and thought that I would easily be able to contact him through Roadshow in the same way we'd got the newsreel to him. And as time went on, Roadshow were getting less and less interested in helping us. And I've tried everything to try and get in touch with him. I sent him invitations to tonight. It just goes to his agent and bounces off. So I'm still confident that when I finally get past the firewall of people around him, that he will sign it. But Gravitas won't release it until I have his blessing. I can show it theatrically like this, but yeah, I can't get it on streaming, on DVD in North America, or education until I get that signature.
Question: he volunteered to come. Isn't that public domain?
Yeah. Well, that's enough for the theatrical. My legal team have said, that's fine. And look, they prepared a letter and said, look, as far as we're concerned, you've made a lot of, you've got a huge paper trail of effort that shows you that you've tried to contact him in goodwill and blah, blah, blah. But Gravitas reluctant.
Major studios are real stricklers for this kind of stuff. I know, again, from having made some documentaries. If you, for example, use a film clip that's from the public domain, that won't cut it with certain studios. One that I won't name, but is located in Burbank, for example. No, you'll have to have an agreement from someone. Now, if you say, well, the filmmaker's dead, the company doesn't exist, they'll perhaps wink at you and say, well, then you need to create a piece of paper that says someone owned it and has given you the right to use it. It boils down to lawyers, I guess. Too many lawyers, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of, I spent 12 months, there's over 300 pieces of archival in there that needed clearing in some way. So I would go back and change the way I was using the clip by introducing a piece of voiceover that used it in a critical or reviewing way, just by saying, you know, the beautiful opening sequence of To Kill a Mockingbird. That's enough, just to say the beautiful opening sequence.
Fair use.
That's right. That's critique. That means I can use it. The big surprise for me with my lawyer was the Star Wars opening sequence. There's no way we're going to get that, because that's twofold. That's vision and music. The fact that we had Mike Schleiger, the opening night projectionist, say, you know, the music comes on and it goes, blah! That's enough. That's critique. So that allows me 10 seconds of music, and then my composer very carefully switched it over to something else that sounded very similar, and the vision, because I'm talking about, you know, the effect it had on me as a kid. That's critique as well. So, but you know, Disney could still come
By
after
the way,
me.
the music was amazingly well done. The composer, congrats on this job.
Yes, he's brilliant. There was a duo. It was mainly Bill, what's his name? Anyways, there was two of them. Did a great job. So there's about 50 minutes of original music. It's on iTunes. It's on Spotify. And then the rest of it is, I had to pay for quite a bit of music, and the rest of it is sort of library stuff. So I chose all the stuff that wasn't composed.
Yes, sir.
Do you think that audiences, like a general audience, would want to go back to film presentations primarily if they were more exposed to them?
Well, they are. They absolutely are. Oppenheimer is a great example. I mean, we're showing both digital and the 70mm print, and the 70mm print outsells the digital 10-1. And people say, no, I want to see the film print. And yeah, we've worked very hard to build up a reputation, and you know, I still do that speech, a different version now, but on all our 70mm films, the projectionist, me or the other guys, we come down and do a speech and try and make it an event. And we always create our own programs for the film, whether it has one or not. We've got one for Lawrence of Arabia, we made one for Joker, we made one for, and we always give them a little, something they can eat, which is relevant to the film. We were giving them sherbet bombs for Oppenheimer, until somebody complained and said it was insensitive, which I thought was ridiculous. But anyway, so we're trying to create a point of difference around the fact it's on film and make people understand why it's different. And that's why it's so important that the film presentations have to look their best. So I think, yes, people are seeking it out now as something different and something more entertaining, because now they know there's somebody there projecting it for me. There's that as well, and because it does look different and it does look incredible, it does at the Sun anyway, because we do it right. But Oppenheimer has been incredible. All the other 70mm releases since Hateful Eight have been really well attended, and the fact that we've had one nearly every year except during COVID shows that there is enough interest that the studios are going, okay, well, there is some money in this. We will release a print. Yeah.
I think we've had the same awareness here in LA. You know, the Cinematheque, especially at the Los Feliz location. I don't know if also the Arrow, perhaps. They've stressed that they are showing you prints, film prints. Tarantino himself is about to reopen, I guess, the Vista Theater, swearing that it will be a film only or film primary venue. So yeah, they're doing it. I think also Vidiot's, the reopening of Vidiot's in Eagle Rock, I think is showing film and talking about that.
The Secret Movie Club as well has, they had that film on, the projection for the theater on Vermont and across from LACC, I forget the name of it. They run 35.
Okay.
So now it's the more that this happens, the more the studios will be encouraged to go back and strike new prints, because that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
And hopefully, the negatives will still be in good condition when they decide to do that.
Yeah. The big problem is a lot of studios have gotten themselves down to one print, and when you have one print, you might as well have no print, because now the excuse is, oh, well, we can't damage the last print. Well, what can you keep it for if you're not going to look at it? You need to duplicate it so that it's not the last print. So, yep. Yes, sir.
Did you know that Kodak has a program that if you're a filmmaker, they would give you a discount, or they will sponsor the film?
No, I didn't know that. That sounds eminently
Yeah,
sensible.
I talked to the vice president of Kodak, and there's a couple of movie that they did that.
Well, I know that in Australia there's a huge boom with younger filmmakers wanting to shoot on film. And we have, the only existing lab now is in Sydney, and they can process the negative, but they can't strike work prints. So, but it doesn't really matter, because people get the negatives done and then they scan them and then everything beyond that. But if they want to get a print struck, they have to come to Photochem here or CPC in London or somewhere like that. So the more need that comes along, it would be great to see some more labs. There is another lab in London that I can't remember the name of. So if we can just get one release a year, one serious release a year, and 35 or 70, and we had Empire of Light, not so long ago, and a few 35s as well, because a lot of the film houses are 35 but not 70. And as long as they do good presentations, people will come for it.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I had a quick question. Inside the film, you do a voiceover where you mention, I forget how you phrased it, this could be meant for another documentary. And then you do a jump cut to what looks like the Jupiter 2, and then you inside it. What was that about?
Yeah, that was great, by the way.
That was an indulgence. I heard about, I'm a Lost in Space fan, I heard about Bill, and I heard about this guy who had built a whole set, of the Jupiter 2, and inside a cinema. I went, oh, hang on, inside a cinema. I wonder if he's a projectionist. Anyway, so I wrote to him, and sure enough, he was a projectionist, and had this wonderful story as well. I thought, oh my God, okay, we're going there. So we shot a whole heap of stuff with him about the amazing work he does when he builds props and things like that. And he's built this whole world that he used to live in as a kid for another documentary, which might happen later. But I sort of threw that in as a something people could have fun with, who would remember what it is, and also as a bit of a tease for maybe a future project.
And where did you meet Robbie?
Fred Barton, who lives here in LA. He's the guy who restored the original one in the early 70s and has the only person who has the rights from MGM to duplicate and build replicas, which he does and sells. So that one was not the original one, but that's the very first replica that he built. So it's a suit, it's a working suit, and it's the only other one. And that suit is the one that did all the TV appearances from about 1975 onwards. So the original Robbie was sold, as you probably know, for a record amount of, what was it? Was it 5 million? It was some record amount in 2017, and I just missed out by 2 years of getting
A couple of million.
Yeah, by getting to shoot him, because I knew who owned him. I knew that he'd be interested. He'd let us come there, and then that happened. And damn it! So anyway, we got the next best thing.
Is there a requirement or a course to be a professional projectionist?
I know Boston Light and Sound, the people that did the Hateful Eight rollout here in the States, they do a course. I don't know of any other course, official course that exists.
I think we've gone over our time limit. Are there any more questions? Maybe one last question? No?
I just wanna say how much I enjoyed watching the film, all the format changes, the cue marks, everything that you threw in there was just fun.
Did you notice they're 20 minutes apart?
Oh, I did.
They're 2,000 feet apart. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.